incredible mother this is, taking on this challenge of raising a child with so many medical problems.
Everyone believed the lie. They saw a frail girl in a wheelchair, her head shaved, her teeth rotting, clutching her mother's hand.
I'll tell you the truth all now.
This was Gypsy Rose, the sickest girl in town, and this was her angel mother, Dee Dee. But it was all a show. We're going to reveal the truth, but it's not just about the fake illnesses or the unnecessary surgeries. The real story started decades earlier with petty crimes, mysterious deaths, and a warning from Dee Dee's own father that went completely ignored. He saw the monster his daughter was becoming, and what he finally shared is, to put it mildly, absolutely chilling. Her father knew all along. What many people don't know is that Dee Dee Blanchard wasn't her real name. She was born Claudine Peter in Chackbay, Louisiana in 1967, and according to her family, she was trouble from the start. Her father Claude and stepmother Laura remember a young girl with a stubborn and manipulative streak. She learned early on how to bend the truth to get what she wanted. Her nephew Bobby Peter described her as a master of manipulation. This wasn't just childish misbehavior, it was a pattern. As a teenager, she was frequently caught shoplifting. When she didn't get her way, she would simply take things. But her manipulations went far beyond petty theft. Her family claims she tried to poison her own stepmother, Laura, by putting the weed killer Roundup in her food. Laura fell violently ill but survived, and though they suspected Claudine, they couldn't prove it. The thing nobody tells you is that this wasn't even the most disturbing event from her early life. The family's darkest suspicion centers on the passing of Dee Dee's own mother, Emma Petre, in 1997. Emma was a frail woman who suffered from various ailments. Dee Dee, then working as a nurse's aide, took it upon herself to be her mother's primary caregiver. To put it mildly, Emma's health took a nosedive under Dee Dee's care. Family members say Dee Dee starved her mother, leaving her so weak she couldn't even get out of bed. One relative recalled finding Emma helpless in her own filth, with Dee Dee refusing to get her proper medical attention. Emma passed away not long after. While the official cause was never questioned, her family has since stated they firmly believe Dee Dee was responsible for her mother's decline, possibly withholding food and medication to control her completely. Her father, Claude, saw his daughter's cold indifference and her hunger for control. It was a chilling foreshadowing of the life she would later build. This history of theft, lies, and suspected harm was the foundation upon which the grand deception of Gypsy Rose would be built. Dee Dee was always a step ahead, always crafting a new narrative. After her mother passed, she moved in with her father and stepmother. It wasn't long before she was back to her old ways, writing bad checks and stealing. She was even arrested and spent about 6 months in jail for check fraud. At 24 years old, she became pregnant by a 17-year-old boy named Rod Blanchard. They married, but the relationship crumbled before Gypsy was even born. Rod has said he felt she tricked him into the marriage. This was the moment Claudine Petre vanished, and Dee Dee Blanchard was born. With a newborn baby, she had found the perfect innocent prop for her ultimate manipulation. But this was only the beginning of her twisted game. Forging a medical nightmare. When Gypsy Rose Blanchard was born, she was a perfectly healthy baby. Her father, Rod, remembers a happy, normal infant. But by the time Gypsy was 3 months old, Dee Dee had launched her campaign of medical deceit. She became convinced Gypsy had sleep apnea and began taking her for frequent hospital visits. This was the first brick in a wall of lies that would eventually imprison her daughter. Dee Dee claimed Gypsy had a chromosomal defect, a vague but serious-sounding diagnosis that opened the door to a flood of other fabricated conditions. The list of supposed ailments grew at a staggering rate. Leukemia, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, asthma, along with vision and hearing problems. Many people are crazy about getting sympathy, but Dee Dee took it to a whole new level. What many overlooked is how she expertly manipulated the medical system. As a former nurse's aide, she knew the terminology. She would describe symptoms with precision, and if a doctor questioned her, she would throw a fit or simply find a new one who would believe her story. She learned that if you keep switching doctors, your story never has to be fully consistent. It's a terrifyingly simple fact that she used for 2 decades. A key moment came when Gypsy was around 7 or 8. She suffered a minor abrasion on her knee from a small motorcycle accident with her grandfather. For Dee Dee, this was the golden ticket. She claimed the injury was far worse and that Gypsy would now need to use a wheelchair permanently. From that day on, Gypsy never walked in public again. The deception became an all-consuming performance. Dee Dee shaved Gypsy's head regularly to mimic the hair loss from chemotherapy, making people believe she had cancer. She had a feeding tube surgically inserted, even though Gypsy could eat perfectly well. What's truly shocking is that Dee Dee would feed her daughter Ensure through the tube during the day and then make her eat regular food in secret at night. She even had Gypsy's salivary glands removed, claiming she drooled too much, which caused her teeth to decay and eventually be pulled out. Gypsy was forced to undergo dozens of unnecessary surgeries and was pumped full of medications that made her genuinely sick, including seizure medication that rotted her teeth. The lie had become a physical reality, etched onto Gypsy's own body. This carefully constructed tragedy made them celebrities in the world of charitable giving. Habitat for Humanity built them their pink house. The Make-A-Wish Foundation sent them on trips. They received thousands of dollars in donations and free flights to hospitals. After Hurricane Katrina, they were portrayed as victims who lost everything, which only amplified the public's sympathy and generosity. All the while, Dee Dee kept Gypsy completely isolated from her father Rod and the rest of the family, telling them Gypsy was too fragile to visit. Rod continued to send thousands of dollars for child support, completely unaware that his daughter was perfectly healthy. Dee Dee had the world fooled, but her daughter was starting to wake up. The first escape. Living as a perpetual patient, Gypsy Rose was a prisoner in her own home. Dee Dee controlled every aspect of her life. She was homeschooled, so she had no friends her own age. Dee Dee told everyone Gypsy had the mental capacity of a 7-year-old, even as she entered her late teens. To maintain this illusion, Dee Dee coached Gypsy on what to say and forced her to speak in a high-pitched, childish voice. Whenever they were in public or doing interviews, Dee Dee would hold Gypsy's hand tightly. It looked like a gesture of love, but it was a signal. If Gypsy said something wrong, Dee Dee would squeeze her hand hard, a silent threat of the punishment that would come later at home. The abuse was not just medical, it was physical. Dee Dee would hit her with coat hangers and withhold food, but as Gypsy grew older, the internet became her window to the outside world. It was a world where she wasn't sick, a world where she could be a normal teenager. She began creating secret social media profiles, talking to people online, and for the first time, she started to understand the true scope of her mother's lies. She discovered she wasn't the age her mother claimed. Dee Dee kept changing her birth year on documents to make her seem younger and therefore more dependent. One of the most incredible facts is that for years, Gypsy herself didn't know her real age. She only discovered she was actually 19, not 15, shortly before her mother's passing. In 2011, she attempted her first real escape. She met a man at a science fiction convention and ran away with him, but Dee Dee quickly tracked her down. The punishment was severe. Dee Dee reportedly smashed her computer with a hammer and threatened to do the same to her fingers if she ever tried it again. For 2 years, Gypsy was completely cut off. But in 2012, she managed to get back online and met a man named Nicholas Godejohn on a Christian dating site. They bonded over their shared sense of being outcasts. For Gypsy, Nicholas represented freedom and a way out. Their online relationship quickly grew intense, filled with secret messages and plans for a future together. Gypsy saw him as her Prince Charming, the one who would finally rescue her from the tower. But this fairy tale was heading toward a very dark ending. Their desperate plan for freedom would involve a horrifying choice. The night the lies ended. By June 2015, Gypsy Rose Blanchard had reached her breaking point. At 23, she had spent her entire life living under her mother's control, a life filled with isolation, fabricated illnesses, and endless medical procedures. Dee Dee Blanchard had convinced everyone that Gypsy was sick, chronically ill, wheelchair-bound, unable to live without constant care. But in reality, Gypsy was healthy. She could walk, talk, and think for herself, yet her mother's lies had trapped her in a lifetime of dependency. Over the years, Gypsy had endured one cruel indignity after another. forced feeding tubes, unnecessary surgeries, and medications that made her feel sick. She was a prisoner in a gilded cage, and the world had applauded her mother for her devotion. To everyone outside, Dee Dee was a saint, a selfless caregiver. To Gypsy, she was a jailer, a manipulator, and a constant threat. For years, Gypsy had tried to reach out to explain to someone, anyone, that her life was a lie. She sought help online and in passing conversations, hinting at the truth, but Dee Dee's charm and credibility always overshadowed her words. No one believed Gypsy. People couldn't imagine that a mother could be cruel under the guise of love. The walls closed in, tighter and tighter, until Gypsy felt that escape was impossible. It was during this time that she met Nicholas Godejohn, a man she connected with over the internet. Their conversations grew from casual chats to desperate confessions and eventually into planning something unimaginable. Gypsy felt that there was only one way to break free: to remove the source of her torment. On the night that would change everything, Gypsy waited until her mother fell asleep. She opened the door to Nicholas, letting him into the house she had been trapped in for more than 2 decades. She handed him duct tape, gloves, and a knife she had bought earlier, each item a small, tangible step toward liberation. Then she hid in the bathroom, covering her ears, trying to distance herself from the sounds of the act she had set in motion. Nicholas entered Dee Dee's bedroom and carried out the violent deed, stabbing her multiple times while she slept. When it was over, the two of them took $4,000 Dee Dee had amassed from donations and fundraisers and fled. They stayed at a nearby motel for a few days, hiding from the world, before boarding a bus to Nicholas's home in Wisconsin. Even in the midst of running, Gypsy felt the need to signal for help. Using her mother's Facebook account, she made chilling posts, pretending to be Dee Dee but filled with urgent cries for aid. It was a strange, desperate plea for intervention, a way to ensure that someone would notice something was terribly wrong. Her hope was that these messages would finally reveal the truth of the little pink house, the house that had contained her life of lies. And it worked. Friends and neighbors, alarmed by the post, contacted authorities. The police began their investigation, quickly tracing the IP address of the messages to Nicholas's home in Wisconsin. When a SWAT team raided the residence, they found them both. What shocked the officers and the world was Gypsy herself. She walked out of that house on her own 2 feet, perfectly healthy. The lie that had defined her entire life was shattered in an instant. The media descended and the story spread like wildfire. People couldn't believe that a young woman who had been presented as helpless and sick had lived her life under the control of a mother who fabricated her entire existence. For Dee Dee's family, the events were devastating, but they also confirmed suspicions long held. Her father, Claude, who had quietly doubted Dee Dee for years, finally saw the depth of her deceit. The daughter he knew, the one manipulated and trapped, had been forced into a situation he had feared. A life-ending act born of desperation. The aftermath revealed the full horror of Dee Dee's condition, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This mental disorder drives a caregiver to fabricate or induce illness in someone under their care, often to gain attention, sympathy, or a sense of control. Dee Dee's entire adult life and much of Gypsy's had been shaped by this cruel compulsion. The surgeries, the wheelchairs, the fake illnesses, all a calculated lie. In the end, Dee Dee's web of manipulation collapsed under its own weight, leaving tragedy in its wake. Gypsy Rose, who had spent her life hidden in the shadows of deceit, emerged into the world finally seen for who she truly was, a survivor of a lifetime of abuse, carrying both freedom and the unbearable weight of what it took to achieve it. Dee Dee's family knew the truth for years, but were powerless to stop her. Was Gypsy's final, desperate act a form of justice or a tragedy of its own? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories.